Hello and welcome to the Hole in My Heart podcast. This is episode 264, your Q&A.
Your Q&A. I usually have like more words with that, but I don't know exactly where we're going to go today. You're going to see it in the show notes where we ended up going. But hello, my name is Lori Krieg, and this is the Hole in My Heart podcast, where we talk about how the gospel is good news for everyone every day. We're coming at you from the lovely WCSG radio studio in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And I have alongside me my husband and favorite licensed therapist, Matt Krieg. Hey, Matt.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm doing it.
You're doing it.
I'm doing life.
Before we hit record, Steve, who's behind the cameras today, he was like, how are you guys doing? We're like, 3 out of 10. Matt said he was a 4 out of 10. So that's going to be our first Q for the A. We are going to be taking your questions, which you all have been sending to me mostly through Instagram. Often I punt you to my email because that is easier for me to answer, to type with my fingers as opposed to my thumbs. But you've been sending them there. But one question I've got for you today, Matt, and I'll answer too, is just, I guess, if the gospel is, I'm more sinful and flawed myself than I ever believed. Yet at the very same time, I'm more loved and accepted in Jesus Christ as I ever dared hope. Today, 4 out of 10 feeling. Mm-hmm. How is it good news for you, and how do you need Jesus right now?
Yeah. I feel like today I have to just expand it out, that it's not just me that is more sinful and flawed and broken than I ever dared imagine. This world is more sinful and broken and flawed than we know, and it goes beyond just people's choices. It goes to like the very fabric of the world, and then therefore the hope coming that all things will be made new. I feel like today I'm feeling the weight of waiting for that. So great. That's where I'm at. What about you?
That really edified my soul. How's the gospel good news for me today? Feeling like a 3 out of 10 good. I don't know. I actually just want to sit and borrow what you just said. I want to sit in that because I think I can stare so easily at there's a season of long suffering that we are still in. That we can't change, that we cannot control, that we cannot pivot. And I think it's easy to get discouraged, and it's easy to either swing either way, like stare at it too much and be like, oh my word, this is such long suffering, my goodness. Or to be like, it's fine, everything's fine, and just ignore it. I can do either one, but tend towards staring at it. So just to think about, don't ignore it, hold it, look at it, and then stare at the hope of the gospel and the hope in Jesus. It's kind of like, what else do we have? What else can you do when there's stuff going on you cannot control? Okay, Matt, we're going to launch with question number 1 that I got this from a mom. I was talking with them, and I actually get this a lot, a version of this. And you and I wouldn't say we got into a fight last night about this, but I would say we got into a discussion that had energy behind it last night. So we're just going to talk about it because I think a lot of people can relate. Here's a question. My son talks to me, the mom, instead of my husband about his porn struggles. Is that okay? I have some thoughts about this. Matt, I'd like to first punt to you. What would you say to this mom?
Yeah, I would say it's half okay in that it's good that your son is wanting to talk to you. The place where it becomes problematic is when you say instead of my husband. Ideally, the child is able to talk to both of you. And so the fact that you're engaged with your kid in a way that they feel comfortable talking about what is oftentimes a very private, isolated experience is really good, that your child is willing to talk to you. So you've done something right. The question is how do you cultivate a system where you're not the only one doing that, where your husband is also able to engage in that way? And I mean, there's so many different reasons why there might not be that connection. But the ideal is that your husband is also able to take an active role in helping your child navigate that issue.
I agree. I wish it was both, but okay, I just want to expand this question out because I get a version of this question daily. It's, I'm the mom, I'm the wife, and I am recognizing my husband doesn't want to study human sexuality. Some husbands flat out won't. And these are Christian, go to church, love Jesus, their wives, their kids, dads. They flat out will not study human sexuality to talk to their sons about puberty, to talk to them about pornography, to talk to them about how to keep their bodies safe. And I was just like, you know what? Someone's got to do it. So mom, with an invitational heart, like say, hey, I'd love if you did this, but I'm going to step in and do this. I want to say something, and then Matt, I want to hear your heart because I want to be peaceful and not a raging woman, because that doesn't help men. But I think as I pray and think about it, I just am like, hey, dads, I know that only 5% of you got a good and healthy sex talk from your dad. I know that the majority of you then you go through puberty, you had no guidance. The majority of you then find pornography. I know that was shocking the first time. And I know that ended up being a place where you brought your life. But you know what? As a mom, as a wife, as a woman in this space, you have to get over it and go find help. You need to get help for processing your addiction. You need to go and find the emotional bandwidth in order to relationally and emotionally connect with your son, because your wife can never embody for your son what it's like to be a male in this sexually broken world. She can't talk to him eye to eye and heart to heart. She can't understand what it's like to be a man in this world. And so I know that it's hard. I know that it's scary. And I know that you never got what you wanted from your dad, but we need you because we can never be the dad or the man that our sons need to help lead and guide them in this space. What do you hear in that, Matt?
I mean, it kind of got call to action. And I think one of the bigger issues that I think men have is we tend to have a more compartmentalized brain. So if it's kind of not happening in front of us, we're not necessarily aware of it in the moment. And oftentimes our struggle, if you go back to the fall, can be passivity, right? We can avoid hard things. We can avoid having conversations when they're not directly happening in front of us. And therefore, if our child isn't coming to us saying, I'm struggling with this, we might never directly be faced with the opportunity to enter it. And so I think the biggest thing that men have to do, we have to proactively have these conversations. And I mean, I struggle as a therapist and as a father to know when is the appropriate time to have those conversations. And we've said before, it should be 6 months before they're, engaging with something in real life. Pornography, it's hard because you have a range, but oftentimes first exposure is 8 or 9, and so by the time your kid is 7, you should probably be starting to have conversations more directly about pornography, but that has to be built upon how do we honor the body? How do we honor our own body? Like all these different steps. And so I guess as a guy, the biggest thing is to make sure we are actively aware of where our child is.
Okay, but I'm already hearing the moms who are like, my husband won't read a book, or he doesn't think he needs to read a book. Like, Matt Krieg, you and I have talked about this. You and I have created resources, and you're asking me, like, where's the resources? Like, why? So you're saying you need to preemptively talk. So then there needs to be preemptive study. Mm-hmm. How do you prompt your own brain to be like, I need to study this?
Put it on a calendar. I don't, everyone's brain is different. I don't know what's going to work for everyone. I know for myself, it's gotta have space where it's dedicated for that. 'Cause my brain is going to get easily distracted and crowded out by other things that are, are more entertaining. sports are more entertaining. Going and playing basketball is more entertaining, even if that is with my son. And so I know for myself, I have to prioritize it. I have to put it on the calendar. I have to say, this day for this many minutes, I'm going to read a book, or I'm going to listen to a developmental podcast. I'm going to do something. And if you're not a reader, hey, we have a ton of other resources. If that's not the first place you're going to go, but we have to be engaged.
Which one of our favorite resources is one that we did create, which is the Raising Kids video series. It's 20 minutes, 8 episodes. You can watch it for 20 minutes and you can do the questions by yourself, with your spouse, with your small group. It doesn't matter, but we're going to equip you with language to talk with your son, to talk with your daughter. What's potentially if they don't? What's the consequences? What do you see in your office? Dads, what do you see in your own life? Dads that do not engage this and help lead their own sons.
So, what I see most is kids coming in. And when I say kids, I mean like upper teen kids who have been, into pornography for 7 years. And it went from normal childhood curiosity after usually an initial exposure to then something where it's debilitating, where they don't know how to get out of it, where they truly can't picture their life without it. And then they're having to do a lot of work learning new coping skills, learning new emotional regulation, learning that it is even possible to live life without this as a daily thing that you're going to. And that's a bigger uphill climb than if someone has had the good conversations and had the skills and had active emotional regulation. And okay, if you want to take it beyond pornography, if there's one thing as men we can do, it's learning how to emotional regulate for ourselves and for our kids.
Why does that matter?
Because I'm going to talk for myself, the only emotions that I knew how to deal with were like happy, excited. Everything else, sadness, fear, shame, any of the negative stuff, all I knew how to do was avoid it. I wouldn't go talk to anyone. I wouldn't do anything for a long, long time. And part of that is because I had this notion of I'm supposed to be the stable one for everyone else.
Everyone else.
I don't know how early in childhood, but for a long time, I had to be stable. And so anytime I had any negative emotion, it wasn't take to mom, it wasn't take to dad, it was somehow bury this. And for me, that was all sorts of consumption, my own struggles with pornography, my own struggles with just checking out and watching TV and looking at sports stats and all these other things that weren't as bad as porn, but were still just me vacating my life in order to not feel. And so for guys to be able to identify, I'm feeling whatever it is, and then to be able to actively move into how do I deal with this in community, in relationship, with presence in their own life. If we can teach that to our kids, then 90% of the driver for pornography, which is negative emotional experience, that we're going to have other avenues to deal with those feelings. And so boredom and loneliness and stress don't automatically turn to this one thing to help me feel better.
So this is like a philosophical change in a home, is a dad waking up to the fact that I am running to porn, to sports, to food, to checking out because I don't know how to deal with negative emotions. And then if they can recognize that in their own life, it sounds like, okay, so then you can attune to, if you've got kids, boys or girls, but I think that there is a special calling for dads and sons to really raise them up. Then you can help them through mirror neurons to be like, I feel an emotion. Do you feel an emotion? To help draw it out in them. And then you can help them before they hit porn addiction phases. They can learn, how do I feel a thing? I know how to healthily deal with the thing. Is that accurate?
Yeah. Yeah. And so, I would have a call to any guys listening. If you are good at this, If you're like, yeah, I'm active and I've been talking with my kids and I am helping them and I'm doing all these things, like, please let us know. Right? We don't hear that often, and it can be really discouraging. And I know, you know what, there's the other side of the stereotypical coin where moms can be more controlling and reactive and everything. Yeah. And I'm sure not every mom is like that. Some of you are doing great. You know what? Some of you are. So we've all got our things to learn of our own flaws, our own blind spots, the way that we react whenever some stressful thing comes into our life, especially with our kids. You know, and so we've all got work. We're all broken. We all fall short. I mean, tagline, the podcast, all fall short, all are loved, right? And so if you're doing well, let us know. We'd love to hear from you.
So that is coming from a space where last night, Matt and I were talking about how I get so many messages in a day where moms are like, why is my husband not leaning in? And I'm like, I don't know why. But Matt, I love this call to action that you're saying, hey, dads, men, disciple makers of the next generation, learn how to navigate your own emotional world so that you can help navigate and walk with the next generation. Is there anything else on this that you want to say?
I mean, just start where you're at, one step.
Yeah.
If that means recognizing your own emotions, if that means going to counseling, if that means reading a book, if that means connecting with a pastor, like, just take the first step.
I appreciate your insight there and your vulnerability. Really huge and helpful. And it's one thing for me to say it as a woman. It's a whole other thing for you as a man, as a dad who is leaning in and working to say it. So thank you. All right, next question. Would you willingly send your little kids to a nature school with a transgender teacher? Would we do that? So we talk a lot on this podcast and in my socials about how we like to look at kids like trees. It's not a perfect metaphor, but let's go with it. What do trees need in order to flourish? They need good soil. So you're telling them the truth. What is it? What does it mean to be male or female? Boys have a natural penis and can help make a baby in a special way. Girls have a natural vagina and can have the potential to get pregnant. No matter how someone changes their body on the outside, they can never actually become the other gender. Is that soil that your kids know? Are they learning that? And we also, if we're using the tree analogy, are they also experiencing age-appropriate wind? So are they experiencing like, okay, if they encounter, so they're getting all this good soil at home, they talk to a transgender person, that just might be like a little breeze. But are they going to a school where with this trans teacher, they're going to be reading them books about, here's your gender, you might be this gender, you might be that, where it goes from, there's a transgender teacher teaching them general things to, let's talk to you about what you might be. That might change the wind from like a slight breeze to a hurricane for your little sapling. So you got to think about that and consider your kids in their specific space. What would you say to this, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on a lot with the kids. It depends a lot with the school system and how they would respond. I know that, and not just with this issue. I mean, it's with anything where there is maybe a social political agenda that might be added. And so, like, the biggest thing for me is even as our kids go to like a private Christian school now, because we made a shift from public school. Like, even with us, like, we have to make sure that we are not abdicating our responsibility as a parent to be the ones guiding them in their like spiritual development. Just because our kids go to a Christian school doesn't mean that we get to just be like, hands off, yay, we're free and don't have to worry about this. Like, we you know the school system that your kids are in, you know the teacher, hopefully, or you will get to know the teacher, and you'll get to know and be aware of the potential issues that are going to arise, because there's not a single place in the world that is going to have like the perfect system.
No.
There's always going to be a discrepancy. There's always going to be something that you're like, I don't know that I'm going to like them learning that or being taught that or seeing this in the lives of other students. It's not all just about the teacher. Like, we just have to make sure that as parents, we are aware of what they're potentially going through and you know, doing maybe a better job of setting aside time to really hear about their day, to pause, to stop and to say, hey, what happened at school today? What do you learn? What do you guys talk about? What do you see in the other students? What like just to be aware that stuff can happen that you're not expecting. But if you're able to catch it early, you have more of an ability to respond well.
2 things I would do if you do decide to go to the school. One, I would ask about the curriculum and love and, because there's a lot of people with certain political views on either side of this. They're like, tell me the curriculum and what are you going to be force feeding? Don't assume negative, assume the best, but still do your homework. Hey, can I just see what's the curriculum? What kind of books are you guys reading? And if it is anything in the curriculum that is, again, going from big picture, this is what people struggle with in the world, and we get to love everyone, which is true. Everyone struggles with stuff in the world, and we are supposed to love everyone and then invite to Jesus is what we would say. But if they're making it from big picture to very pointed to your child, that for me is a big red flag. You might struggle with this. You might experience this. I've got friends in Canada who say there's 3rd graders. They get pulled out of their class one-on-one and they're asked, what gender are you? So the assumption is you're not your biological gender. That's going to jack with a little 3rd grader's brain. So anything pointed and specific, that'd be a red flag for me. Second thing that I would do is make sure you're talking with your kid. If you choose to go to the schools, talk to your kids about your teacher, their teacher. Let's say it's a trans woman. So that means a biological male who's transitioned to woman. That's a trans woman. So let's say that's who the teacher is. Hey, buddy, do you know that some people, when they look in the mirror, they feel like they see their boy body or their girl body, and they feel like their insides and their outsides don't match. They feel like, oh, I don't feel like that boy body I see in the mirror. That's actually your teacher. Your teacher, when he looks in the mirror, he was born as a boy. When he looks in the mirror, he feels like his insides and outsides don't match. He's struggling. But we all struggle with stuff, don't we? Yeah, we do, Mom. What do you struggle with? I struggle with wanting to hit my sister when I'm mad. What does Mom struggle with? Oh, I struggle with yelling at you guys when I'm mad or whatever. What are we supposed to do with those struggles? We're supposed to take them to Jesus. Take them to our family or our community and Jesus. So this person, your teacher, is struggling. And it seems like, we don't know this, but I'd say it seems like when they're struggling, instead of taking it to their community and their teacher, they're instead going with the struggle and they're changing their body to match how to change their body to look more like a girl body, even though it's a boy body. Oh, but did you hear what you just did? When you shaped it with this, we all struggle. All of a sudden, your kid isn't looking down on your teacher, isn't looking with fear at his teacher, but looking hopefully eye to eye at his teacher as you're having this conversation. Now, can your teacher ever become a girl? No, Mom. Why not? Well, girls, hopefully you've been saying this, girls have a natural vagina and can get pregnant. Yep, buddy. And this teacher, no matter how much he changes his body, can't ever become a girl. You're saying it with grief. Like, people spend so much money transitioning, and I would say that that's not God's path of flourishing for dealing with this struggle inside. I believe that God can empower people to live into their broken bodies until we see him and he gives us the new bodies he's promised us in Romans 8. So that would be the premise, I'd say, with your kid. And then you're going to have to talk about how are you going to love? How are you going to talk? So your teacher wants to be called Mrs. So-and-so. We're going to call her Mrs. So-and-so, or however you're going to live into this. So anytime you have a question about that, I just want you to know that we can talk about things like that at home. And if you have any questions, it's totally fine. We can talk. So I would figure out what the curriculum is, make sure it's not pointed at your kid. The second thing is make sure you're talking with your kid, explaining what's going on, because kids are very perceptive and can often perceive things like just people who are wrestling with their gender. Anything you'd add to that, Matt?
No, I think you covered it.
Okay. I found out a child in my son's class touched his privates. My heart is breaking. I don't know what to do. What's the next steps? This is tough. Sadly, in the last 10 years, child-on-child sexual abuse behavior, especially in schools, especially on playgrounds, has been skyrocketing. Why? Who knows? I'm going to blame phones. for a lot of it, in the sense that kids have unfettered access to screens. They're seeing porn at a young age. If they're seeing porn, they're seeing abuse at young age. So the screen itself is harming, abusing your child. That's traumatic. Children were never meant to see what God designed to be sacred, let alone in an abusive situation. But if 9 out of 10 porn videos are abusive, your kid has encountered child abuse. So then they see that, and then they may want to experiment at school. And or let's blame screens one more time. As parents, we can be on screens. Matt and I are always trying to figure out ways to limit these addiction tools. And so then we're not looking at our kids. We're not attaching. We're not attuning. They're looking for eyeballs. They're looking for care. And perhaps this would be a way that they'd interpret care, or just curiosity gone wild because they're not getting the attachment and attunement at home. Could be that they're getting physically abused somewhere else, and screens have nothing to do with it. Could just be Satan. Who knows? Anyway, it's gone up in the last 10 years. So what does this mom do? First thing I would say is take a deep breath. This stinks. You're going to need to probably cry and grieve. Not on your child. Your kid already has enough to deal with. This stinks. And you could be like, I am so sorry. I wish this didn't happen. Your kid is going to hyper perceive your emotions and doesn't need to caretake you. So you need to cry and grieve on the Lord, on your community. And then you can be sad in front of them, but not extreme. Then you need to go and ask more questions. You need to go to the school. You need to go to leadership. Hey, curious, my son said this, help me understand. Because for you to automatically call the police, I'm not saying you shouldn't, or automatically call CPS, or automatically jump to XYZ conclusion. You don't need to do that yet. Get more information. But then I will post in the show notes, if you hear things that fall into the category of this was extreme. This wasn't just little kid curiosity that can be easily distracted. This wasn't just kids being like, what's this? Oh, it's a penis. It was an extreme thing. I'm going to post, how can you know if it was extreme? I'm going to post that in the show notes. Then you need to take further action. So talk with the leadership at the school if they're not taking action to make sure that your kid is safe and that legal procedures are being followed. Then you can call things like child advocacy centers, the police, etc. What would you add, Matt?
Yeah, I would say, first and foremost, if you're hearing this from your child, pull them from class while you are assessing safety. If this is something that happened years ago, because sometimes it doesn't come out for a while, if it's something that happened years ago, and your child is safe going back to school, back to class, then you don't necessarily have to remove them from class while you're searching for the answers of, from the administration, from the teachers of, hey, how are we going to provide safety for my kid and every other kid? If this is something that it's oh yes, this week something happened and there's an obvious still potential for this to happen again, you don't really want to put your kid back into the class until you guys figure out, as an administration, as a class, as everything, that they are safe to go back. And so I know that can raise a lot of fear of well, what are people going to think of my kid when my kid's not going in? Am I making them fall behind academically, whatever? None of that matters. Safety first. And
again, this could be something that's just super natural curiosity of kids that can be easily distracted, which that is the key thing. If this kid who's touched your kid can't be easily distracted, it's a persistent, it's aggressive, it is, again, I'll put the list there. That's the red flag pendulum swing. Is if this is just oh, whoops, I was just curious, that's something. But if it's something that's persistent, cannot be easily distracted, that's a red flag. But then specifically to care for your son, how do you care? There's so many resources available. You do just have to dig, because people are not talking about this. Because it's for parents whose kids have been abused. That's not their story to tell. So you're not going to find that on IG. But what you can do, child advocacy centers, they're all over. Just look for them. They have a ton of resources. They can send you to the therapist. And even if you're listening, you're I don't know, was this serious or not? I always recommend reaching out to a child therapist. They could do an initial eval to ask you questions, to ask your kid questions. They are people who have been trained. There's more resources than you realize. So start with child advocacy centers or a local child therapist and be like, hey, can you help me just think through this? Because as parents, we're a banana town. We're going to either react too much or too little. So we need help. All right, last question. How do you talk about your struggles with sexuality with your kids? Have you done that yet? See, you guys keep asking us this, and like, we just don't know. We're still learning. Our kids are 11, 9, and 6. My oldest has heard my story from a stage. It was very not, this is who I am. If you guys have been listening to the podcast for any amount of time, you know, I experience attractions towards the same sex. I didn't say this is who I am, even though she asked me at one point, she's like, is that you? When I was writing a talk about LGBTQ, she's like, is that you, LGBT? Is that part of is that you? I was like, oh, well, you know, I could identify that way is what I said. And I said, you know, but it's a part of my story. And I shared in very non-specific ways about what I wrestled with and how I found Jesus and whatever. And I think this is what I was thinking about answering this question is think about your reasoning for sharing your story with your kids. And if it's something that's like, you know what? They're writing their story. I'm like picturing my kids writing their story in a book. And I have mine, and mine's like pretty written. I'm ahead of them. If it's helpful for them, if it's a help to them, not for me, but for them, for me to put my story next to theirs and be like, hey, look what God did. Or, hey, I can relate at some level. But it's just like I'm a reference. I'm not dependent on their story to make me good, but if it can be a reference that's helpful, then share as it seems helpful to them and their story, but in very non-specific ways, at least 12 and under. What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. It's whatever is going to be helpful for them. And so with my story, we haven't directly talked about, my pornography addiction. But at some point, especially as our kids are getting older, especially as their friends are maybe getting phones and access to things, like there are going to be ways that I would have to share with both my girls and then especially my son, I can't even say that. I can't even say especially. It's like right. Equal. Like, hey, yep. There's me making an assumption and it's not true anymore. But at some point, it's going to be important for me to share, not in explicit detail, but just the reality of that experience that I had and how I got caught up into it. And then I think especially for me, the heart behind it, the hard questions that were constantly drawing me back to that addiction. Because if they have those hard questions, let's say they never struggle with porn, God, please help that. Yeah. They're hopefully going to understand those hard questions and know. Are you saying heart? Heart. Those hard questions of, am I worth anything? Like, where does my value come from? What is my purpose? Where do I belong? All these questions that we all have. If they can start to hear that those questions are more important, then even if they don't struggle with porn, if they don't struggle like you or me did at all, hopefully they're still getting kind of the sediment stirred up that those questions in their life are important to answer to.
I've loved hearing you allude to your story in little bits. You've never said anything explicit, but you've alluded to there's some really bad stuff online. I don't even know. What have you said? You can remember?
I know that I've said, when we've talked about online safety, I have made mention, there are some things that I got caught up into.
Yeah.
And I was stuck there for a while. Yeah. And really that's it. It's not anything beyond that, but then to say so if you ever see anything or if you're ever having questions, come to me or you.
Yeah.
And so it's definitely not been an explicit thing. It's not been even super detailed other than just to say, because right now it's just general online safety is what we're concerned with for them. As it becomes more hey, this is an important piece that is more specific, then I feel like I will add that.
I've talked about porn. With kids?
No, I know.
Oh, okay.
But I'm saying if it's something that is, we're looking at the situation, whatever they're going through, because this is, again, like 1,000 1-minute conversations, not one big 1,000-minute conversation. You know, as they're interacting with life, if there's stuff online, then I think there will be more times as we go through where there's more specific mention of pornography, and then more personal mention of like, yeah, I was caught up in that.
Well, and again, what I like about the picture of like, here's our kid with their book they're writing, their story. If you bringing your story that God's still writing, but it's ahead of theirs, putting it next to them is a helpful reference for their story writing, then mention it gently. But like, how much do you say, how much do you not? I think I've mentioned this before in other Q&As. It was so interesting interviewing all of those people for our Raising Kids training, John Mark Comer, the Perrys, all of them. None of them had an explicit answer to this question. Everyone was wrestling. So this is really going to have to be a discernment thing between you and the Lord, and be more cautious, I would say, than not. I would go slower than not is my best thought. Okay. Well, no, I want to say one more thing. Matt, to go full circle back to the first question, what you were just saying, even if our kids never struggle with porn, if they can understand the heart stuff, but then to what you were saying, if they can know what to do with negative emotions, I just think that that's really important too. Is that's the meat of it. That's where we can focus now as parents and disciple makers of the next generation. Okay. What further questions do y'all have? I still have a slew here that we could answer. Please let me know. I'm praying about how to answer them because, the socials can be helpful. So hit me up, podcast@lorikrieg.com. You can email me there or DM me. Just find me on Instagram. Matt is not on any of the socials. But what do you guys think? If you could take a minute to rate and review, that would be super meaningful. We'd love to hear from you. But this is the time when I thank everybody. Thanks so much to Bethany Sanderson for editing this video, to Steve Odell for doing the audio, and for everyone here at the Hold My Heart podcast. We'll see you next time.